All right, so you start digging into the 1940 census, and I'm stealing this from Kyle, our producer. Says, do you have that? Was there that room in your grandparents' house? It was full of old boxes. You looked inside. It had old clippings and mementos that helped shape a story. And is there a chance to sort of lift that collective lid from those boxes to piece together the story of the United States? When you started getting it, what was that treasure trove of information? Where were you looking in order to kind of inform this, and anything there that surprised you most?
Yeah, that's a fun metaphor. And this is also a little bit of the answer to that question about why 1940. When I began the study, which about 5 years ago, the most recently released full trove of census information came from 1940. So that means not just me, but basically anybody who does their own family genealogy, anybody who's trying to do local history, they almost always start with the most recent census. So the Census Bureau is very committed to individual privacy. And so any response that you give to the census is held completely confidential for 72 years. At least it's supposed to. As we can talk about for 1940, one of the other things about 1940 is that those restrictions were relaxed and were used against Japanese Americans during World War II. But since then, the United States has been and the Census Bureau has been particularly adept at trying to maintain that confidence. So as a result, we don't get to see individual responses. We see the numbers that are produced at the end of the census, but we don't see what every person says until 72 years later. So I went to the National Archives a lot. I spent a lot of time looking through the records of the Census Bureau itself. But fundamentally, the most important resource for me was these 131 million people that were written down on a whole bunch of sheets of paper and that have all now been digitized and we can access, and you can kind of pick through and look for what's happening. So like any person can do this. The one thing that I guess if we're thinking about like how can other people try to like do the same kind of work, and how is it that I see these records maybe a little bit differently than other people do? When I see a census record, which is 40 people long, their names, all these answers to these questions across the side of the form. Think of a form about the size of a newspaper, half a newspaper. I always look right to the top right-hand corner where you see the name, the signature of the enumerator, because every single person in the census had another person come and find them. I mean, it's kind of audacious. It's crazy to imagine we're going to take 120,000 people in a couple months, send them everywhere across the entire United States, and they're going to like touch every single person and put them down on a piece of paper. And then when you
crazy, right? It's really actually kind of impressive.
It's incredibly impressive. So census people, and this is all over the records, they always talk about it using essentially military metaphors. There's just no way to understand the scale of the mobilization except as like an army of enumerators, because that's the only other time when so many people all at once move in a coordinated fashion. But this coordinated like pincer movement is to like find and enumerate every single person so that they can be represented ideally, right? When it really works, it's just so they can be properly represented and like fit into this democracy.